Greetings, family. This is Dr. Greg McNeil. Today it's about 102 degrees right now, and I think the temperature might climb a little bit more. So it's pretty toasty today. And but that's appropriate because the subject that I want to share with you actually it brings on a lot of heat because it brings on a lot of confusion, and you've heard me say it before. It brings on a lot of miseducation. You've also heard me say in the past that, whenever I talk about African history, I'm always talking about world history, regardless of what we might hear otherwise, right? We know we all come from one place. And despite all of the resistance and other types of, misinformation that we've dealt with, they've never been able to get around the truth. So let's start with this one right now in a time that's really critical for us. So, who are we as African people? So, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. African people are one people, but not the same, meaning that there are different types of African people that originated on a cubulon and they migrated throughout the entire planet, right? All African people. Now, here's the challenge that we're dealing with. Because of the antiquity, the aboriginality of African people, they are indigenous or aboriginal everywhere, despite what colonization has done through its through its miseducation and various terror plans that African people and other people of color have endured since colonization began. But it doesn't change the fact who the people are. So let's not get that twisted. So when the question comes up, who are we as African people? One of the first things I want to know is where is the research? Not the research that's scattered all over the place, right? Books by authors that none of us have heard of, or, we have different people bringing information from all different places. We're not saying that that information that they're bringing is invalid, though some of it may be inaccurate. But when information is spread all over the place, it is difficult to learn, hence the misinformation and the confusion that people have. So, because the history of America is a complete story of miseducation, there is the idea that the people that came to America, they came post slavery, which means then that the African people here are said to be descendants of slave. Not only is that false, but it's inaccurate. But if those who are sharing the information are not putting it in places so that we can all learn at the same time, then we learn in bits and pieces. So if you live in the Caribbean, you learn one thing about African history. If you live in different places on a cubulon, you might learn something else about African history. Hell, if you live in different places throughout the United States, you have a different view of African history. So one of the things that really inspired me when I became a researcher was I wanted to put the information in a central place, like this tree behind me. So when you go to this one area, you know exactly what you're looking for and you know where to go. That was one of the questions that I had with other African scholars. I'm like, why isn't your research in a place like ProQuest? Right? We all know that African history is challenged, but that's not the point. Why didn't we put it in places where we could all find it? Why do we have to look all over the world? It's sort of like we're on, I don't want to say like a wild goose chase, but I think there's another term right now, but I can't think of it at this moment. But if you know the game, you know what I'm talking about. You're looking all over the world for clues so that you can solve a specific challenge. So that's what I wanted to solve in my research. So I went looking all over the planet, scouring research, looking at different authors to see, well, is your information true and credible? And if so, then why is it in a place where we can all find it? How many of you know all of the scholars that have contributed to African history on the planet? Where would you actually go to find those African scholars, right? And then what are they saying? Now, I'm not one to really call everybody out, but I don't like bullshit either, right? I can acknowledge that um, colonization has impacted so many of us. So let's just understand this, right? Identification with the aggressor is a real thing. That's what happens when your mind has been colonized, right? You begin to think like those who have colonized you. It happens to all races of people on the planet, right? And if you heard anything in the news about what's going on in the United States right now with various groups and with this deportation, you can see that there's a lot of shock and pain through all communities that are dealing with the division that's causing the trauma in their lives. Division ultimately that comes down to miseducation, misinformation, and narratives that are not true. So, again, who are we as African people? First of all, the word you're looking for is Aboriginal. Why am I saying that? Because it's true. You see, if you're the first people, you are Aboriginal. Don't confuse what I'm saying to you with the colonized education that you grew up with. The first people anywhere on the planet are African. Don't confuse it with the people who changed during the Ice Age, where we would get many different races of people through the process known as differentiation, right? During that Ice Age period, African people who were spread out throughout the globe, throughout Northern Europe and other places that would get caught up in that 20,000 or 40,000 year period, they would change and mutate. This is all documented, by the way. But there are other people who do not like the idea of differentiation because they still wanted to be separated from African people. So they want you to come from outer space. They want aliens and other creatures like this to be a part of our history. Well, I'm not going to deny that it is. But if it is, it still started with African people. Don't get that twisted. But that's another conversation, right? But don't get that twisted. Do not misunderstood what I just said right now. So if we are talking about people like Anunnaki and other groups like that, hey, who are they talking to if the people on the planet for the first 2 million years are African people? All right. So we come back to the idea of who we are, Aboriginal, the first people on the planet anywhere, right? You carry a gene that I've talked about over and over again. And that gene connects you to the original people on the planet. No other people carry that gene. And so, if you're the only one, African people that carry that gene, specifically the women, no matter where you are on the planet, whether you're on Cubulon in different places, whether you're in the Caribbean, South America, you could be in Europe, you could be in Asia, and certainly throughout the United States, every Black woman, right? Every Black woman, ancestor, grandmother, mother, daughter, child, infant, and the unborn will carry that gene, which means then everywhere you go, you are always the start of civilization. I did not say that. The research did. And that's why I found it. And I placed it in a central location called ProQuest. ProQuest dissertations, right? It's also been paid for, so it remains in open access, right? And it's copyrighted. So those who don't like what I have to say, they cannot alter my work and say that Dr. Greg McNeil said something else, right? I'm also doing something else too. For any other African scholars that are actually hearing what I'm saying right now, I want you to dive in on the research. Let's get connected, right? We are not after one another's resources. Let's also get that cleared up, right? Because that's also colonialism. Let's get beyond that, right? Because when we come together, right now we have research that can be shared in the same place so everyone can be educated, not just African people, but everyone. If you want to heal this game that we're in, we need to be educated. We can't be in silos in different places, people trying to hoard information. When you are the first people on the planet, it is absolutely impossible that one individual could tell the story of the universe. That is not what I'm doing. And that's not what my research does. My research is a gateway. And in a sense, you could say it's like a weaver. When you enter my research, what you'll find out is a connection to all of the other great scholars on whose shoulders I stood on to bring this research to you, African people, and to everyone else that want to be educated with research that can be proven, not speculation, not fact. Right? So I'm going to say this right now. There is a term called FBA. When you research, like I do, research, not a philosophy. I don't know where that is. You see, when you use the word black, you're really saying African. When you say African, you're really saying black. When you get past the colonization, that is what we are talking about. When you talk about the conditions that we live under, the conditions that has forced and shaped the way people think and move throughout the world, that's another process. But don't confuse that process with who you are as a people. Do you understand that? So, again, Aboriginal, Black, African, living all over the globe, right? One people, but many, not the same. If you want to be unified, then you understand that you are one, sharing the same blood, indistinguishable. Who you are is not defined by the color of your skin. As you no doubt know, that African people come in many different shapes, sizes, and colors, from the shortest people on the planet to the tallest people on the planet, from some of the lightest people on the planet and to some of the darkest one on the planet, and everything in the spectrum. Now, if you want to know, dive into my research. Understand the story that shapes the mind and the narrative of people today that have us confused.